Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I present the Lobbying, Improving Government Honesty and Trust Bill 2024 and the explanatory memorandum.
And I call the member for Kooyong. Sorry.
Sorry, Deputy Speaker. I move.
Sorry,
no,
Clerk.
sorry. Yep.
First reading, a bill for an act to establish a scheme to promote and enhance transparency, integrity and honesty in dealings between lobbyists and government representatives and for related purposes.
Call the member for Kooyong.
I move that this bill now be read a second time. Deputy Speaker, a year ago I stood in this place and I introduced my Lobbying, Improving Government Honesty and Trust Bill. In the last year, little has changed for the good in the halls and chambers of this place. Trust in government continues to fall. The public believes us less and less. The major parties seem to work together only when colluding against their rivals. Democracy is under threat globally in what we acknowledge is a post-truth world. Speaker, we can combat cynicism and disbelief only by committing to openness, to a radical form of transparency. In the words of Woodrow Wilson, our government should be all outside, no inside. In a democracy, the rights of bodies to make representations to government, to have access to and an impact on policy making, it's fundamental to the proper conduct of public life and the development of sound policy. However, lobbying activities lead to corruption, where they prompt decision-making which is not merit-based, honest and transparent. The existing Federal Lobbying Code of Conduct aims to ensure that contact between lobbyists and government representatives is conducted in accordance with public expectations of transparency, integrity and honesty. But that code is toothless and it has failed. It is too limited. It does not engender transparency and it is unenforced. Nothing has changed in the last 12 months. Commercial lobbying is a multi-million-dollar industry in Australia, but the public registry applies only to third-party lobbyists who are paid professionals engaged by clients to influence public officials on their behalf. It doesn't include in-house lobbyists who are employed within an entity purely to undertake that role. So it applies to only 20% of the lobbyists who roam our corridors, who knock on our doors and who seek to influence our decisions. The other 80%, who knows? The register as it stands does not include company executives, NGOs, not-for-profits, charities, think tanks, research centres, religious organisations, trade unions and other bodies. On the 17th of November 2024, the register included 727 third-party lobbyists. About 40% of them were former politicians, ministerial advisors or senior public servants. So, given that that's 20% of the lobbyists in this place, we know that there are well over 3,500 lobbyists regularly walking the halls of the Australian Parliament. We need to regulate lobbying for three reasons. The first is to prevent corrupt behaviour by lobbyists and by public officials. Cash for access, cash for comment, cash for approvals. The second is to ensure fairness in decision-making by stopping secret influences on vested interests. The third is to ensure that all government decisions are honest, transparent and merit-based. But the lobbying of enforcement codes in this country has been dismal. The current code meets only one of the 10 principles for transparency and integrity in lobbying, which have been set down by the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development. Suggestions that the code needs to be better enforced have been actively rebuffed by successive governments of both stripes. We need an independent regulator which will administer a strong legislative scheme, not a complacent and conflicted government which is waving an administrative framework with the cohesion and the effectiveness of a wet tissue. Australia remains behind the UK, Canada and the US. They have already legislated strong integrity frameworks, the power of which includes their scope, post-employment restrictions, penalties, independence of the administrative entity and transparency both of monitoring and of public reporting. All of those are addressed in this bill. It includes provision for a new publicly accessible online lobbyist register, which will include all lobbyists. It requires lobbyists to lodge online quarterly returns, reporting who they've met with, for how long, where and why. Ministers will publish their diaries online too, so that we can cross-compare and we can verify that reporting. The bill also mandates a longer post-employment prohibition. Ministers and senior staff would be banned from working as lobbyists for 3 years after they leave Parliament. It would legislate a register of senior government appointments so we actually know who is working where and when, both during and after their time in this place. At this point, we have no online record or open record of senior government appointments in Parliament House. The bill would regulate enforceability. It would include fines and bans for lobbyists who breach the bill. Rather than a self-regulated code bedevilled by intrinsic and systemic conflict of interest, the code would be independently enforced by the Independent Integrity Commission. It would be a code in which Australians could trust. Deputy Speaker, we have to hold public officials to a high standard of integrity. When they leave public office, officials shouldn't be able to use their insider knowledge for personal gain or for the commercial benefit of their new employer. And they shouldn't be making decisions prior to leaving office which might advance that employer-to-be. And yet we have seen, time and time again, the revolving door, the golden escalator, between this House and industry, with ministers and public servants accepting lucrative private sector jobs with unseemly haste immediately upon leaving Parliament. Speaker, sunlight is the best medicine. And it is time to shine a light on the halls of this place, to illuminate the workings of the light on the hill. We need to know who has the ears of our politicians, and we need to stop Canberra's revolving door. Australians deserve to be able to trust their government. In this 47th Parliament, the Albanese government has not brought a single private member's bill to this House for debate. I hope that this will be the first. This bill is an important contribution to the restoration of integrity and transparency to this place, and so I commend it to the House.